Did you know that yesterday actually, was the start of the Passover holiday? Runs for a week up till Easter, which is next Sunday. And Passover, of course, is that biblical story from the book of Exodus. Get my mouth in gear here. From the book of Exodus in the Old Testament of the Bible. And if you've seen the movie, The 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston, you probably know the story, right? And speaking of that movie, check this out. This is our own Ernest Holmes with Cecil B. DeMille, thank you, and Reverend Dr. Don Curtis on the set of the 10 Commandments. Yeah, that's really cool, isn't it? From like 1955. And Ernest Holmes was quite the mover and shaker. Of course, he's the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living, the author of The Science of Mind that we teach from. And it's widely known that he was very influential with a lot of folks in the Hollywood music and acting industry, as well as others. And it includes DeMille. Norman Vincent Peale credits Ernest with his positive thinking. Peggy Lee, he was hugely influential in Peggy Lee's life. Cary Grant, and many, many others. So that's just some trivia for you about our founder, Dr. Holmes. So if it has been a while since you've heard the story or seen the movie, I'll give you the Cliff Notes this morning, okay? Because I want to look at how this might be relevant to us. This story might be relevant to us today in New Thought. How this might be relevant. So this story takes place in Egypt. And Egypt at the time is run by a pharaoh. And many Jewish folks had been immigrating into Egypt during that time frame, like 2 million, a lot of people. And the pharaoh was a little concerned that they might be outnumbering the native Egyptians and that he might need to do something. So he thinks, I'm going to take control of this situation. I'm going to enslave them all. And I'm also going to order that all of the male Jewish children, boys, be killed. Yeah, that'll prevent them from expanding further. Nice guy, isn't he? And so that happens. And you know a guy named Moses, you might have heard of him, right? Moses, his mama went, oh, no, this cannot happen, no. So she takes him and puts him in a basket and floats him down the Nile River, praying that somebody will rescue this child off of the river before an alligator gets him. Well, who do you think did? The Pharaoh's daughter, right? How ironic is that the Pharaoh's daughter is the one that pulls the baby out and brings this Jewish baby into the palace to raise him as her own. Many years later, he finds out his heritage and so forth, but he's still kind of a big deal because he's the princess's, at that time queen, I guess, son, adopted son, but he's got a power position, and he's walking through the slaves one day as they're working, and he sees one of the slave masters abusing one of the slaves, and he gets very angry, and he kills the slave master. So he must escape now out into the desert to save himself, and this is his first encounter with God in the form of a burning bush. Remember that? The burning bush. So Moses is having a conversation with the burning bush, which is God, and God says, hey, Moses, go back and see the Pharaoh and free the slaves. Free the Jewish slaves. Moses says, I got a bush talking to me. I better do that. Okay, fine. I'm going to do that. So he goes back. He goes to the Pharaoh and he says, let my people go. You can see Charlton Heston saying that, right? And the Pharaoh says, nope, not going to happen. And he says that 10 times. 10 times he says, no, I will not let them go. And after each no, God sends a plague. Okay, buddy. How about what goes first? Let's see. No, we're going to do that later. Anyway, after each one of them, the last one is the one that finally got his attention, the 10th plague. And guess what it was? It was to kill all of the firstborn baby boys. And the cattle in this case. But in this case, Pharaoh happened to have a son. And so karma came into play. And Pharaoh lost his son during that. And it got his attention. And he finally allowed the folks to go. But when that happened, when that plague of the death of the children came, God sent message to the Jewish people to protect their children because the angel of death was coming. And they were instructed to put lamb's blood on the outside of their doors. There was a whole beautiful process around how to do that, the details of it, but we're not going to go into that. But they put the lamb's blood on the door, and the angel of death passed over their homes. And that's why we have the Passover. It's a feast which celebrates God's intervention in their lives, saving them from the angel of death as it passed over the Jewish homes in order that they might escape Egypt into freedom. Now, there's a lot more to the story. The movie itself is 3.5 hours long. It's epic. They've got the parting of the Red Sea, the wandering in the desert for 40 years, and all that happens there, and the 10 Commandments, the tablets that God gives to Moses on Mount Sinai. It's a good story. If you've got an afternoon that you're looking for something, check it out. It's very interesting. But as I've thought about this story this week and its meaning to us today in New Thought, I realized that it really is a perfect story to go with my talk, which is Chaos, Crisis, Opportunity, and You. And we're wrapping up, of course, our March theme, which is choosing to live. Choosing to live. And obviously, escaping a life of slavery for freedom is a big choice in choosing to live a more abundant life, isn't it? Taking that risk that was involved in all of that. But being metaphysical, of course, I want to peel back the layers of that obvious thing and see what else might be in there for us in this story. So in the metaphysical community, it is said that Egypt represents the darkness of ignorance. And we often think of Egypt as a metaphor for our subconscious. Because we are frequently ignorant of or unaware of what's happening there. Something like 95% of the time, I think we said last week, right? 95% of the time that we are in that darkness and unaware of really what's happening. And this story happens in this place of unknowing with people who are literally enslaved. Literally enslaved. And enslavement for us, of course, is our beliefs. Our limiting beliefs. We are enslaved in some way to our beliefs and what is, and rather than the expansion that our soul is seeking, rather than an expansion. But what about these plagues? What about these 10 plagues? The first was turning all of the water in Egypt into blood. Now, I don't know about you, but we live in the desert, just like Egypt is in the desert. And if all the water around here turned to blood, I might be a little concerned. Right? Oh, yeah. Not Pharaoh. No big deal. Nothing. Next came frogs, covering the land. Well, Pharaoh says, okay, you get rid of the frogs, I'll let them go. But then he changed his mind. Next came lice. And then flies. Pharaoh says, okay, get rid of the flies and I'll let them go. And then he changed his mind. And then all the livestock got sick. And then people experienced festering boils that wouldn't heal. And then hail, so powerful that it struck down everything. The plants, the animals, the people. It was devastating hail. Everything was being destroyed. Well, that got his attention. So he's like, okay. Let your people go. But then he changed his mind again. So God sends locusts, darkness. No response from the Pharaoh. And finally, every firstborn human, son, and cattle begins to die. And the Pharaoh finally lets the people go. But as they're going and they're out in the desert, he goes, what am I doing? That's my workforce. Come on, you guys. Yeah, let's go. He gets the army, changes his mind again, and he takes off after them. And they get to the Red Sea. And at the Red Sea, Moses is like, okay, God, now what, right? And so God tells him to part the sea, and Moses does, and his people all get through, and they all go on the other side, and it closes back up. And the Pharaoh is trapped. The path is no longer available, and his people are free. They are gone. What a stubborn Pharaoh, right? What a stubborn Pharaoh, continually agreeing that yes, 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 I'll let them go, and then changing his mind. He's obviously not familiar with Emmett Fox, who said, change your mind and keep it changed, right? Yeah, didn't know about that. But let's reflect on where we might be or have, or maybe once have experienced being that stubborn Pharaoh. That stubborn Pharaoh. How are we creating chaos and crisis in our lives and experiencing over and over again the negative effects of our actions, our thoughts, and behaviors? And how bad does it have to get before we finally say, okay, I will release it. I will release it. Like the Jews in Egypt, we can find opportunity in the chaos. We can find opportunity in the chaos when we open to God's guidance. When we open to God's guidance. Whether you believe the story of Passover is actual and factual and actually happened, or whether you believe it's a metaphor for something else, I think our example in this today is how the activity of God works in our lives every day, all the time. The Israelites represent higher consciousness throughout the Bible, the chosen people, the chosen ones, the ones that are always striving and doing something more. They are representing that higher consciousness. Moses and the Pharaoh represent the two aspects of one consciousness, the awareness consciousness and the subconscious. And Moses is the evolutionary force. Moses is the one that is leading them on to the newness, expanding them, freeing them, and tugging at those old states of consciousness, trying to pull them up into the newness and the higher realization and higher life expression. Pharaoh, though, of course, represents the rules of the body, the what-isness, the physical world, the subconscious. So you've got Pharaoh and Moses in the story fighting, right, pulling on the higher consciousness. I want it over here. We're going to stay stuck in the old. I want it over here. We're going to go to the promised land. So that's the example we see in the story, which is what can happen with us. We set a goal, we set an intention, and it's not here, it's not here, it's not here. We keep reverting back to the old that has us stuck. Our Pharaoh is stubborn. Our Pharaoh is stubborn. Our Moses is trying to pull us forward. So Ernest Holmes says, the great and only awakening that can ever come to us is when we become aware of the fact that which enables us to think, to be conscious, to be creative, is the mind of God active within us, right? Activity of God within us. That is our awareness. That is our consciousness. That is us, right? The divine, the spark of life that we are is the God presence within us. And God is active in our lives at all times. The question is, do we notice? Do we notice when God is active in our lives? There's a book called When God Winks. We did it in book study several years ago. It's by Squire Rushnell. And he defines a God wink as a personal signal or message directly from a higher power, usually, but not always, in the form of a coincidence. How many times do we brush those off or just say, oh, it was just a coincidence? It's not. It's not. He shares stories in this book of all the crazy coincidences in people's lives that are God winks in their lives. And do you notice your coincidences? Do you accept them as a God wink? What about serendipities? A lucky break? A fluke? It's just a fluke. It'll never happen again. Accidents, right? There are none of those. Those are all God winks, God active in your life. Yeah. Do we still think, oh, that's just unbelievable? Remember we talked about miracles last week before? Yeah. Louise Hay, in her book, You Can Heal Your Life, she tells a story about a woman that she was working with that was having trouble with her vision, both in the physical realm as well as in her spiritual realm, and being able to see the vision for her life. And Louise is working with her, and the woman got up one day and her contacts were bothering her, so she took them out and realized that she could see perfectly without her contacts. Her vision, physical vision, had been healed. And all she said all day long was, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. And her body said, okay, if you can't believe it, I can't believe it. So I'm going to take you right back to where you were. We'll get you right back in your prescription. And she could no longer see clearly. Body aligns. Our body aligns with our beliefs. Our body aligns with our beliefs. In thinking about many of the stories in the Bible, I think that they are extreme examples to open our minds to what infinite possibility really means. Because we have a hard time in our finite world and our world of reality and how things work. We know things. We have a hard time sometimes really expanding to that realm of the infinite, that anything truly is possible as we believe. As we believe. A talking burning bush, parting the Red Sea, plagues on land and people. And why frogs? That one didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand the frogs. But anyway, it's all pretty bizarre stuff when you think about it. But it's told to help us realize the possibilities in our own lives. When we feel like we're stuck, we think we're stuck, it's going to be this way forever. We're the Pharaoh. We're stuck in our Pharaoh-ness. We can't see beyond. We can't see the promised land any longer. We have to step out of that into infinite possibilities and recognize that it's all there for us as we believe. So where are you seeing God show up in your life? Where are you seeing God show up in your life? Are you experiencing regeneration in your life, being transformed by the renewing of your mind? Pharaoh's mind was finally transformed as he watched the sea close back up. He was cut off. There was no way to get those people back. He was cut off. And sometimes we have to get cut off completely till we see no other option than to change, right? There's no other option but to change. And it doesn't have to be that dramatic for us. It doesn't have to be that dramatic. We don't have to suffer. We can use our spiritual practices and principles. We can use spiritual accountability partners to achieve a changed mind. Spiritual practices like meditation and journaling, sacred study, affirmative prayer, affirmation. We know how to do these, and hopefully we're using them on a regular basis in our life. But what is a spiritual accountability partner? Well, it's very much like an accountability coach. I don't know about you, but I've been hearing a lot about accountability coaches. I've started a new food plan and I need some accountability. I need someone to be with me and hold me accountable to it. I've started a new fitness program and I need somebody to hold me accountable, to go to the gym with me, have an appointment with the trainer, hold me accountable. And so I was wondering how that might apply to us on our spiritual journey and what we're growing towards on that, our deeper relation with the divine. And so I think it would be someone that we would set specific, measurable, and realistic goals with in our spiritual life, who would then regularly follow up and talk to us about our progress, how we're doing with our meditation practice, how we're doing in our prayers, what's manifesting in our life, how our mind is changing about things, how things are transforming in our world, that they would be there to support us when we stumble. Anybody else stumble on your spiritual journey? It's kind of rocky sometimes. Yeah. They'd be there to help support us on that, and then also to celebrate us in our growth, celebrate us in our expansion. Now, I know many of us have prayer partners, and that's a great start to have someone to pray with us and for us on a regular basis. That's wonderful, but imagine taking that to the next step and having an accountability partner with you on your intention that you set in January. They know your intention. They hold you accountable to it. You have practices that you do each and every day, each and every week that you discuss with them. What if you had that person? And then it can be someone that it's a mutual relationship where you do it for each other, or it can be someone where they do that for you, and then they get their support from someone else. That way you stay focused on what you're doing, and they have someone else that supports them in what they're doing. So in any way that it works best for you, it's an idea that's come to me this week, and I wanted to share that with you as perhaps a new tool in our toolbox as a spiritual accountability partner. So spiritual partnering is a powerful practice that will support our inner journey to set our minds free of the Pharaoh's enslavement of limited thinking. The story of the Passover ultimately signifies a transition. It is that transition from the limitation and enslavement of our old beliefs into the promised land of our new way of being, into our new transformed mind, our transformed life, if you will. And it recognizes that out of adversity, chaos, and crisis is opportunity to grow and to expand, because that's our nature as spiritual beings, is to expand, is to grow. So consider for yourselves what thoughts enslave your mind and limit your freedom. Is it a belief in a limitation? The pie is only so big and there's only so many slices and there's not going to be enough for me? Is it, this is all I'm worthy of? What is your limitation thought that enslaves your mind, limits your freedom? Can we instead follow Moses' consciousness to the promised land, to choose more life? To choose more life. Well, let's take a look at some spiritual tools this week and see how we might be able to let this chaos and crisis pass over us this week during the Holy Week of Passover. So number one, what plagues you? What plagues you? Consider in your meditation time this week the things that plague your life. Where are you being a stubborn Pharaoh? Where are you holding on to an old belief that's no longer serving? Try to identify any resistance to change or to healing, and use journaling to capture your revelations and spiritual mind treatment then to transform that resistance into receptivity. Number two, how are you renewing your mind? It is Romans that says, be you transformed by the renewing of your mind. And Ernest Holmes used that frequently as it relates to the science of mind, because change your thinking, change your life is sort of like that. And then we'll add on Emmett's, and keep it changed, right? And keep it changed. So notice the repetitive behaviors that create chaos and crisis in your life. And notice where you're being the stubborn Pharaoh. When something comes up this week that's not to your liking, hopefully that won't happen, right? You won't have a garden hose incident or anything like that you have to deal with this week. But if it does, notice your belief or behavior that is being reflected back to you. That is being reflected back to you, and find opportunity instead of chaos. And then journal your revelations. Number three is looking for those God winks. Looking for God winks. Look for and record coincidences, serendipities, lucky breaks, flukes, accidents, and recognize God's at play in your life. Call it what it is. God at play in your life. Allow Spirit more activity through you. And remember, what we focus on expands. So as you're looking for these God winks, guess what? You'll see more of them. You'll see more of them. And the fourth is to consider a spiritual accountability partner. Is it right for you? Using our definition, consider if this type of relationship would be beneficial to you on your spiritual journey. If so, prayerfully consider who you might want to invite. Asks for Spirit's guidance in this selection of the perfect right partner for you. And then I invite you to wait at least 3 days before you take action on that, and continue to deepen and anchor in that. The Feast of the Passover is remembering to allow Spirit's action to work through our lives and to let that chaos and crisis pass over us. Pass over us. We don't have to say yes to chaos. We don't have to say yes to crisis. We can look for the opportunity. So we'll close today with a quote from our Joyous Living Journal from March 26, which is called The Passover. And it says, "This story is a reminder that no matter what the oppression may be in your life, there is always a higher power ready to intervene. The Pharaoh of your consciousness that has you enslaved in limited self-expression must acquiesce to divine intervention. No matter how strong the hold may be, Spirit will start tapping. And if need be, it will get louder and stronger until your earthbound mind gives free passage to the emerging possibilities of the awaiting promised land." So it is. I invite you into affirmative prayer with me, please. As we go within, we recognize that God is all there is. There is nothing outside of it. It is the infinite love and joy, the peace and the harmony that is this life experience and expression. And it is only one. There is not God in anything else. There is just God. The infinite presence, power, intuition, intelligence, wisdom. It is that which has created all and continually creates of itself all that is. And I know that all of that presence is right here, right now, in, through, and as each and every one of us in this room. It is my life and your life right now, right here, gathered together in this room, connected in community, connected in the oneness and the unity and the wholeness of each other and that divinity that is God, and with each and every other person and plant, animal, mineral, anything on this planet. We are one in that, with that, in the expression that God is. It is infinite, and we are one in that infinity. And so knowing this, I speak my word for and about all of us gathered today, knowing that we're gathered by absolute divine appointment to be together in celebration of this teaching, this service, and each other, this community. And I know as we recognize our Pharaoh, our resistance, our stubbornness, to release the what is for the what is yet to be, the greater expression of us, the unfolding of the divine through us, the leading edge of consciousness seeking expression through us as our lives, that we simply recognize those God winks and say, yes, yes. That is God's activity in my life. Recognizing that happens each and every breath we take is the activity of God in our lives. And so today, if there's anyone that has anything on their heart that they are seeking blessing around, we lift it into this prayer, holding it in loving consciousness in the sacredness of this moment. And knowing that whatever needs to be revealed is done so with ease and grace and clarity. That whatever needs to be healed, that healing is revealed. If it is abundance, that circulation and flow and all that is necessary flows easily and effortlessly into our lives. And that if it is loving relationships, we know that they are abundant in our lives. And how grateful I am for this knowing. Grateful I am for this teaching, for this truth, for this knowing. And so I release this into the action and activity of mind, knowing that the law says yes, that it acts and is done as we believe, and that the word spoken is the word made manifest. So we release this powerfully into the action of law, knowing that it is already done, and we simply await its manifestation in form in our lives right here, right now. As I let this be, we affirm it together by saying, and so it is.